काट देता हूँ।
मैडम नमस्कार। मधु जी नमस्कार।
नमस्ते। मैं कांटेक्ट कर रही थी डॉक्टर पंकज मित्तल से, सो
मैडम तो है, नीचे है। नमस्कार मैडम। मैडम उपलब्ध है और क्या रेडीमेड?
दिखा नहीं मेरे को।
अरे हम लोग तो देख रहे हैं ना एक दूसरे को।
अच्छा,
आप देखिए, डायरेक्टर लोग कहाँ देख पाते हैं हम लोग को।
है अब दिख गया, अब दिख गया।
नमस्कार नमस्कार।
Good afternoon, Dr. Pankaj Mittal. How are you?
Fine, thank you. Good afternoon to you.
Just wait for 2 more minutes for Dr. Devendra Kodwani, so we will start. Dr. Kodwani will be just joining, got the information from his office. So we will, if we can wait for 1 or 2 more minutes, please. Okay, Dr. Kodwani is here. Good morning, Dr. Kodwani.
Good morning and good afternoon to all of you in India.
So thank you so much. We will begin this webinar. It's sharp 4 o'clock here and 10:30 in United Kingdom, London. Dr. Chiffon.
Thank you, Professor Perhar. So greetings to everyone and welcome to the webinar on instructional design for online courses, which is being organized by the Commonwealth Educational Media Center for Asia, CEMCA, New Delhi. I am Chiffon Chatterjee, Senior Program Officer, Online and Blended Learning with CEMCA. Professor Nageshwar Rao, Honorable Vice Chancellor, Indira Gandhi National Open University, New Delhi. Professor Madhu Parhar, Director CEMCA. Professor Devendra Kodwani, Professor and Executive Dean at the Faculty of Business and Law at the Open University, UK. Professor Pankaj Mithal, Secretary General, Association of Indian Universities, New Delhi. The respected academicians who have joined us today, my colleagues from CEMCA, and all the colleagues who are here with us through the Zoom platform, as well as who have joined through YouTube live streaming. Welcome once again, and thank you for taking the time to be with here today. Let me first take a few moments to briefly introduce SEMCA. SEMCA, the Commonwealth Educational Media Center for Asia, serves as the regional center for the Commonwealth of Learning, Vancouver. It serves the Commonwealth Asia region. This was established in New Delhi in the year 1994. SEMCA promotes the meaningful, appropriate, and relevant use of media and technology to serve the education and training needs for Commonwealth member countries of Asia within the overall vision of sustainable development through learning. The Government of India, by a gazetted notification dated 10th February 2000, notified SEMCA as a diplomatic mission under provisions of the United Nations Act 1947. SEMCA's work spans 8 countries of Commonwealth Asia, which are Bangladesh, Brunei Darussalam, India, Malaysia, Maldives, Pakistan, Singapore, and Sri Lanka. Guided by SEMCA's strategic plan with its focus on learning for sustainable development and taking cognizance of the current as well as emerging priorities, challenges, and opportunities in online learning as being emphasized by governments across nations of Commonwealth Asia, SEMCA is engaged in extensive capacity building initiatives for online course development. To cite an example, SEMCA's MOOC on online course development for SWAYAM, developed and offered in partnership with open universities in India, has reached out to more than 5,000 higher education teachers. This is a course designed to empower educators to develop courses for SWAYAM, which is the online learning platform initiated by the Government of India to promote access, equity, as well as quality of education. Now, within this overall paradigm, instructional design for online courses plays a very vital role. Today's webinar on the topic is therefore a significant milestone in this context. With this introduction to the webinar, it is now my privilege to invite Professor Madhu Parhar, Director, SEMCA, for the welcome address, followed by the release of the SEMCA book. Over to Professor Parhar, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Chiffon. I welcome our acclaimed speakers and colleagues who are attending this webinar. Before the introduction, I take this opportunity to inform that SEMCA has developed a handbook on online education in Commonwealth Asia. As informed, SEMCA is working in 8 Commonwealth countries. This very important handbook gives an overview of the status of online learning in the Commonwealth Asian countries. I request Dr. Manas to just show the book on the screen, and this will be a virtual release of this handbook. The handbook has case studies of 7 countries: Bangladesh, Brunei, India, Malaysia, Maldives, Pakistan, and Singapore, and there are 7 institutional case studies. All of us, we know online education was and will be the future trend in education. The handbook is edited by Dr. Manas and Professor Falachandra. Now, introducing our esteemed guests, it is my pleasure to introduce the chairperson of the webinar, Professor Nageshwar Rao, and our esteemed speakers, Dr. Devendra Kodwani and Dr. Pankaj Mithal. It is difficult to introduce them in a short span of time, reason being that each one has a notable work in their own fields, but still I will try. Firstly, the chairperson, Professor Nageshwar Rao. a management scientist, presently Vice Chancellor of Indira Gandhi National Open University, one of the largest university not only in India, in the world. Has been Vice Chancellor of other state open universities and few more. Received DPhil from University of Allahabad, has been a recipient of gold medals and other various coveted scholarships. More than 170 research papers and articles to his credit. I want to introduce him, which will be relevant for this webinar. Want to highlight the work he has initiated in online education in IGNOU. January 2020, there were 21 online courses in IGNOU, just before the lockdown was there. During July 2020, 52 new courses were introduced, thereby making 73 online courses with an enrollment of 150,000, that is 1.5 lakh learners there. Currently, under his leadership, there are 151 courses in various disciplines, varying from arts to languages, whether foreign or Indian languages, social sciences, gender and management, etc. Skill-based courses and other socially relevant courses like in the field of tribes, Gandhian studies, etc. He has taken a lead in translating SWAYAM courses into 12 Indian languages, thereby making SWAYAM courses accessible to a large number of the learning community. IGNOU has been offering online programs and it has the approval of the regulator, that is the University Grants Commission for online courses. I think I can go on, but a very brief. We welcome you, sir. Dr. Devendra Kodwani is Executive Dean of the Faculty of Business and Law at the Open University, UK. University which all of us who are in the ODL system, we look upon. He is currently member of Vice Chancellor's Executive Committee at the Open University, joined the university in the business school in 2004, previously employed in India at the IIM Ahmedabad, Gujarat University and other institutions. We are proud of you. He has been a course team member in various accounting and finance modules taught at undergraduate and graduate levels, redeveloped the Open University's MBA program, and developed 2 specialist master programs, that is in MSc Finance and MSc Human Resource Management. He has a passion for education and its power to transform lives. This Open University's social mission and values resonate with his view and the role of education in society. Now his experience is as an online education. Over the years, he has built sound experience in learning design for online education and various platforms. He has served on the board of directors of Future Learn, one of the very important providers of online education, along with edX or Udemy or any one of them. It is Future Learn is a global online education, a leading revolution in innovating online learning. Develop MOOCs. So it's not that he is talking about it, but he himself has developed MOOCs on management and business courses. We welcome you and look forward to listen to you. Our next speaker or the last speaker, Dr. Pankaj Mithal, Secretary General of the Association of Indian Universities. There are 1,000 universities, to be very precise, 1,019 universities in India at the moment. Connecting with all of them, for her a big task, for AIU a big task. Served the higher education sector, especially university education, for the last 3 decades. Was with the apex regulator of higher education, that is the University Grants Commission of India. A Fulbright scholar and topper in her academic career. served as the first regular Vice Chancellor of Bhagat Phul Singh Mahila Vishwavidyalaya, a rural university in North India in 2008. Her contributions in institution building, I want to highlight that, institution building coupled with blending of the traditional and the modern education is an exemplary contribution by her towards the promotion of rural women folk, and that is a unique. As an additional secretary in the University Grants Commission, she promoted SWAYAM by creating awareness on SWAYAM initiatives in the university. And that's why she has worked a lot on the SWAYAM and SWAYAM courses. Complete understanding of SWAYAM, we welcome you, Dr. Mithal. Before I request Professor Nageshwar Rao to chair this webinar, there is a request from Dr. Pankaj Mithal that suddenly she has been invited for another meeting, which is at 5 p.m. So she will present first, and Dr. Kodwani. Dr. Kodwani, with your permission, please, if we can go ahead.
Yes, please.
I give this webinar session to Professor Nageshwar Rao. Thank you.
First of all, I thank Simca for giving me an opportunity to be with you all on this webinar on instructional design for online courses. I am happy to see the distinguished speakers, Professor Devendra Kodwani ji, Professor of Financial Management and Corporate Governance from Open University, UK, and also Professor Pankaj Mithal, Secretary General, Association of Indian Universities, New Delhi. Both are the great academicians and both are in touch with the online learning and regulations. And they do have the international exposure also. We will be benefited by their talk to all of us. I'm also happy to see the Handbook on Online Education in Commonwealth Asia. It is the publication of the SIMCA, New Delhi, and this talks about the details, the progress of online education in all the Commonwealth countries, Bangladesh, India, Malaysia, Maldives, Pakistan, and Singapore. Then we have also, we can also see the future plans of these institutions in this book. It is quite useful to most of us because in India also, right now 58 institutions, they were permitted to go for the online programs. So this exposure to look at the experiences of online education in different countries of the world through this book, it will help us a lot to look into our teaching learning process and also the mechanism through which we can reach to the learners effectively. I must compliment SIMCA for this great initiative and especially to Professor Madhu Prahar. As far as online education in our country is concerned, we do have online regulations way back in 2018. And then the process of recognizing the institutions for online programs, this was being started. The regulations, it was later on again being reviewed in 2020, wherein the efforts have been made to integrate ODL and online regulations both. And then the things, they started moving at a faster pace. And right now we are in a position to say that more than 50 institutions, 50 universities, they have gone for more than 300 programs for online mode, including the MBA, MCA, and other technical programs, which are having the national as well as international relevance. This move it has become much more useful and relevant because of this COVID-19 developments. Almost all the conventional institutions, they have gone for the blended mode, and in most of the cases, they have also gone for online mode. So the momentum has gone up, and almost all the institutions, whether they got the permission to run the online programs or not, but they started experimenting with the idea to go for these online programs. Even in our country, there is a Ministry of Education portal, that is of Swayam portal, in which more than 2,000 courses they were being put, and more than 2 crore learners they were registered. This experimentation, it was started in 2016, and fortunately Professor Pankaj Mithal is present over here. She is also one of the national coordinators on behalf of UGC to cover more than 1,000 courses, and they are very useful, and they look at almost all the areas, the humanities, the social sciences, the management and technology. All those courses are available, and their examinations, they are being conducted by National Testing Agency, again with the Ministry of Education. So we do have also a bigger platform to move ahead in this direction. But we all are here to listen to the distinguished speakers, Professor Pankaj Mithal and also Professor Devendra Kodwani. So I am also eager to listen to them, because they would like to talk to us on instructional design for online course. And that is very, very useful for the beginners also. And the exposure which these two people, they are having, not only nationally, but international exposure, that will help many of the universities who are going for these online programs. They will benefit by their great thoughts, which they will express before all of us. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Dr. Pankaj Mithal, I invite you for your presentation or your expertise on your online education.
Thank you, Madhuji. Thanks for inviting me here. Thanks to Samka Manas for inviting me here, and also accept my compliments for the beautiful book, Handbook on Online Education in Commonwealth Asia. This was presented to me by you yesterday, and I have briefly gone through the book. Really well drafted and well documented book. So congratulations to Manas also for this particular book. Now, coming to the topic, instructional design is not my forte per se. So I will leave that topic to Professor Devendra Kodwani, sir, because he will be talking in detail about this. What I'll be talking about is that how this Swayam came into being, how this open education resources came into being in India. And I mean, it will be sort of a story which I myself underwent when I came back from the university. Like 2008, I went to this university as a vice chancellor, and 2014, when I came back, the work of, we used to call it in India, EPG Pathshala. EPG Pathshala was something for developing open education resources in postgraduate courses, curriculum-based open education courses. So when I joined this program, I got a feedback that this is a type of a program where even if you spend 20 years, nothing will happen. So I said, why that type of thinking is there? Then they said, nobody knows what is to be done. What is OER? That itself is not known to people. So when I saw there was something like 200 modules, when I say module, a module was in, say, 4 quadrants. One quadrant was video, one was text, one was learn more, in which future references were there. And the 4th quadrant was self-assessment, how to assess yourself whether you have really learned or not. So what was thought of was that for a complete postgraduate program, for different papers, like generally we used to think that we'll have 16 papers in a particular postgraduate program. For each paper, there will be 35 modules, and each module in 4 quadrants. So 16 into 35. So these were the modules which were to be developed by for each of the subjects, and there were 70 subjects identified. So you can imagine how many modules were required, and how many modules were ready? Only 200. And 200, that too, most of the modules were like the earlier newsreaders used to speak, like sit in front of the camera, just speak, start speaking, just looking at the book and speaking. And that was the type of modules which were being made. And then we did realize that there were many good teachers, they were excellent teachers, but when it came to teaching the camera, it was really tough for them. They could not teach the camera. They used to say, we are used to classroom teaching, because in classroom you get it's a two-way process in which you at least see the expressions of the children. In front of camera, you just can't even see the expressions of the children. Therefore, it was becoming very difficult for them to make the modules. So what we did, first thing which we did was that we held a meeting of all the principal investigators and slowly started training them. We held many training sessions, and then we also engaged. Earlier they were told that you engage your own cameraman, engage your own studio, do your own editing. They could not do it. So we engaged some firms which were good in this. We did a sort of a tendering and all. We shortlisted 8-10 firms, and we told our principal investigators that choose out of these, do some sort of a animation, do good videos, and we also trained them that how to speak in front of camera and how the video should be made. And I am happy to say that within next 2 years, 2016, just now Professor Nageshwar Rao was telling that 2016 we started SWAYAM, but till 2016, from 2014 to 2016, in 2 years, the modules rose from 200 to 25,000. And that too, the quality of modules was much better, because now the training was given. The teachers knew what they have to do. The teachers knew how they have to speak in front of the camera. The teachers knew what OER was. But then in 2016, when it was gaining popularity and it was being used as a blended resource, for blended learning, or for a flipped classroom model, which we used to call in India, that flipped classroom model, in which this material was given to the students in advance, and then they used to study in advance, or it was used as a supplementary material for the students. But then at that time, we had a secretary who was a very, very forward-looking secretary, Mr. Subramaniam. He said that let us move on from OER, Open Education Resource, to MOOCs. And when we moved from OER to MOOCs, there were many, many difficulties which we encountered. One was that for say, one course, which we call, in India, the general connotation is paper, but in SWAYAM, we used to call it course, one course. So one course again consisted of something like 30-35 modules. But here the challenges were different, because in Open Education Resource, it is a resource which is lying open like we have any other resource in the web. But in MOOCs, it had to be a structured course. There had to be a start date, there had to be an end date, there had to be a structured course, there had to be a hand-holding by the teacher with the student, there was a provision for quizzes, there were a term and examination, there was a result, there were credits associated with the course. So that was a totally different challenge, which was taken more by Ministry of Education, and they gave the work of developing a platform to an organization, but then it was lately taken over by IIT Madras, and then they developed a platform in which all these courses were uploaded by the teachers, and the students could do these courses. But again, in the beginning, the popularity of SWAYAM was not too much, because the students, one, they were very new to the technology, and actually thanks to COVID, after this only the use of technology has become very, very fast-paced. Before, this technology was not used that much. So whether it was OER or it was SWAYAM, means MOOCs courses on SWAYAM, they were not used by many students. So that is again to make it popular, because you know that the world over, the MOOCs completion rate is not more than 3%. So to ensure that the students use this MOOCs platform, SWAYAM platform, and they do MOOCs courses, what we did at UGC was that we made a regulation in which we said that in the regular teaching programs, if a student is doing MOOCs on SWAYAM, they can get 20% of the credits through MOOCs. Means in a program, 80% of the credits they can do in the classroom, face-to-face mode, but 20% of the credits they can do on MOOCs through the SWAYAM platform. So that was something which changed the very dynamics. And the teachers, I mean, especially the universities where many teachers were not there for teaching the elective courses. In those courses, those elective courses were taken up by the students on the SWAYAM platform, and it started gaining popularity. And slowly, there was a lot of course, awareness again was an issue. Like somebody was saying here, that awareness was a big issue, because many of the students, I mean, in spite of best of our efforts, many of the students, many of the teachers, many of the universities didn't even know how to go about it, how to register for a course in SWAYAM, how to do a course, and then who will evaluate me, who will give the marks, will the university sort of agree to those marks or not. But we had almost 4 or 5 years we took to sort of iron out all these issues, and ultimately the SWAYAM did succeed. And when this COVID struck in 2019, rather 2020 in India, the SWAYAM came as a savior, because when the universities and colleges were closed, the teachers could not teach. At that time, the SWAYAM courses were the courses which were taken by the students. 2 crore, he's saying 20 million students took these courses. And that is why when we saw the popularity of this program, then the limit of 20% was raised to 40% during the COVID time. And during the COVID time, for a regular degree program, 40% of the courses could be done through SWAYAM, through MOOCs courses on the SWAYAM platform. So that was how we tried to make SWAYAM, and it is now gaining a lot of popularity. And of course, there are many technical issues. One biggest issue was how to hold the examinations, who will set the question papers, who will evaluate those question papers, because in SWAYAM, the number of students at times are very large. So if the number is very large, how to evaluate the question papers, that was an issue. So then we roped in National Testing Agency, and National Testing Agency, we got the question papers made by the teachers who were teaching that course, but then the evaluation, the conduct of examination was handed over to NTA, who did it in multiple locations, because again, India is a large country and the students enrolled from multiple locations. So all those locations, we had to create centers, hold the examinations, and then they send the this script to teachers in case of sort of descriptive answers. But mostly we used to think that answers should be objective type, so that it is easy to evaluate those answer sheets. But the journey was long, it was difficult, and still I cannot say that it is perfect, because it is never perfect. There are so many issues involved with it. But we tried a lot, and we learned a lot, and we evolved in the process, because it is always an evolving concept, something which we keep on evolving with. So that is how we reached SWAYAM, and I am sure in days to come there will be many more things. And with the national education policy, which is giving a lot of impetus to use of technology in teaching, learning, research, collaborations, this will further gain impetus. And SWAYAM courses, online education, online programs, for the first time, full online programs have been given approval by the UGC through a regulation. Earlier, it was only some courses, not full online program, but now full online programs can be done, and recognition has been given by the UGC. So this was a journey of SWAYAM, which was a difficult journey, but a very interesting journey, and we all learned a lot in the process. Thank you, Madhuji. Thanks for inviting me, and thank you, Professor Rao.
Thank you so much, Dr. Mithal. It was a very interesting thing how online education progressed in India and how SWAYAM evolved. A good case to document now. A big case study it can be to document it. Thank you once again. Now I invite Professor Kodwani. He has, as I had given him his introduction, but he has been working with the Indian system a lot. So being Indian, we are proud, and working, and his work in the Indian system is also quite appreciable. He, as one of the members of the Board of Governors of Future Learn, he has a vast experience of how Future Learn and about the online education. We are eager to listen to you, Professor Kodwani.
Thank you, Professor Parhar, for first of all inviting me to participate in this capacity building program. Congratulations to SEMCA on publishing that booklet, which I think has immense value in capacity building area. I find it difficult to follow from some Mithal's fantastic explanation of Swayam's journey, and you called for documenting. I will be very keen to work with her to create a case study or a paper out of it with Professor Mithal if she is going to share and give me honor of working with her on that, because truly impressed by what we have achieved in India. It's not a small achievement by any means to do this in 4 or 5 years, what Swayam has done, and world needs to know that. So if Professor Mithal will permit me, I will contact her outside the meeting and seek her guidance and see what we can do with that story that Professor Pahar has just planted in my head.
Sure, by all means.
Thank you, and it's a pleasure to meet you. And thank you, Professor Nageshwara, for your kind words. So I'll share with you some of the learnings that I have been having over time. So Professor Pahar gave me, can I share the screen, Professor Madhu Pahar?
Yes, we can. We will make you the host, Manas. Please.
Yeah, it has done. It has done. He can share.
Okay, thank you. So I hope now you can see a presentation slide.
Yes,
we can.
Yeah. Okay. Right. So Professor gave me 3 kind of prompts to think about this chat. So conversation. So I will focus mostly on the middle point around structural design, but also give quick kind of my view on online courses and future and bit about future learn. So I think, as Professor Pahar said, online courses are here to stay. And I argue that these are the reasons for it, particularly in the South Asia context. I have been looking at the information from the South Asia perspective. So there is obviously demand side pull. We need to have a scalable offer in tertiary and higher education for a vast population. As we know, 65% of Indian population is under 35-40 years of age. They are going to need access to high quality education and affordable too. Developments in educational technologies now have made it possible to create a rich educational experience that we would expect in a good university or a college. Indeed, while India still needs to progress a lot, particularly whole South Asia in internet access, but we can leverage the mobile technologies and it should be possible to find ways. I think we did some work in Africa where bandwidth was a problem. So SEMCA has done some work as well. SEMCA's parent body, Commonwealth of Learning of Africa, by creating offline multi-format learning materials that could be quickly downloaded on a mobile phone. So we can overcome some of the challenges, but high quality experience does require still a good bandwidth that I think is not difficult for a country like India. In next 5 to 10 years, we should have high quality bandwidth possible for most places. The great attraction of online courses is and will remain, from what we find here in the West, is the flexibility that it offers to the learner to study at any place and time. A lot of research we had done with students, why they study with OU. The top consideration comes with flexibility. And then second is the affordability. Lifelong learning is here. We don't have time to go into this very important dimension of society. Most of the young people now in their 20s will probably reskill themselves 2 or 3 times during their professional career, or maybe 4 times. We are living longer, working longer, so learning will be needed. And potential cost benefit of the online learning. Potential, I say, because it is not easy to understand the economics of online if you're not careful. Sorry, my computer is playing solo. It has gone in auto mode of some kind. This is the reason we need to consider. Sorry, I'm very sorry about my laptop playing up. The third from the bottom is the GER ratio, which is about 27% for South Asia. That is a big gap we had to catch up with the rest of the world. And that's why we need to improve the access. In future education, we might see a lot of things. So just to know what's happening with my computer. Okay. So I think we will see for at least foreseeable future of 20 odd years, traditional campus-based and blended offers, and then online, and future might be probably mostly blended and online rather than only traditional campus-based education. And I'm saying 20 years, so I may be actually projecting it longer than it might take. However, you can see on the right side, there are a lot of other things going on who are working with the partners in higher education, such as Coursera and Udemy and others. We'll talk about Future Learn as one of those. Coming to question of what this will do to our model is, I see there will be increasing tailorization and personalization. So I call it what people study will become increasingly by choice. So SWAYAM is a good example where people will go to study what they want to study. So that's the what side of study goals. And how they study, how they engage with learning is another dimension of how a student will personalize their experience of higher education and learning in general. So what that creates is a kind of tailorization index. As an institution, you have to choose where do you want to operate in that landscape of customization of what students study and how they personalize. And so you could be high on what they offer, like IGNOU and Open University gives people freedom to study what they want, and then they can personalize. So you can visualize institutions will make choices where they want to operate on this tailorization of higher education or learning index. But if you combine that with the mode of learning and the tools that we are using in designing learning, and how long the student commits to learning, that creates another what I call liquidity of learning index. So a student may commit 3 months to a learning piece, or they may commit to 24 months. And they can then, therefore, if they want virtual learning experience, they will again choose. I think what SWAYAM experiment offers in India is to actually look at this question very carefully, how people have mixed their 20 to 40% MOOCs with their conventional class-based learning. And that is, in a way, it's a serendipitous that I wrote this slide about 2 years ago. It seems to be live experiment in SWAYAM and the rest of the sector in India. So these two forces of tailorization and liquidity of learning will create a learning environment and a higher education space that would look very different in 5 to 10 years' time. And all the universities, institutions of higher learning will need to understand where they fit in. So I'll conclude on that, my view of future of online and education. Going back to, again, my computer playing. Going back to the main purpose of this session, instructional design for online courses. Now, okay, I'm not going to touch mouse or anything. Hopefully it is still there. Now, when we think of designing instructional materials, the learning design, I think we have to think in terms of two things. What are the learning outcomes and what are the learning activities that will lead to realization of those learning outcomes? So normally the learning outcomes, as we all know in academics, are defined by the outcomes of the graduate degree that we are offering, our qualification, and that sets the program objectives, program learning outcomes. University or the authorities in the universities, study boards and so on, decide what are the key objectives from a qualification that student needs to realize. So I'll take that as given and then focus on learning activity. But it is very important to note that you cannot start beginning of a learning design depends on how clear your learning outcomes are. If learning outcomes are not clear, you can't design learning well. Okay, so that I take it as given, but please underscore the point of clarity of learning outcomes. And we spend a lot of time in thinking about learning outcomes, how they are stated, are they clear for the learner? And they vary. I mean, it depends on which level you are designing for. And colleagues here, I'm sure many of you would be aware of frameworks like Bloom's taxonomy, to decide what you teach in first year, what you teach in second year, what you teach in third year. And increasingly, the cognitive difficulty increases so that student is actually developing their mental faculties. In terms of the learning activities, now this is one of the ways you can look at. The reference is there. I'll be happy to share the slides, so please don't worry about noting the references, etc. So what are they looking at in terms of different models in different universities? You can see here. So it's not in particular order, but I would say you could think of assessment as one of the learning activities. Now, within assessment also, as we know, there are nuances. So you can do assessment for learning and assessment of learning. Assessment for learning is what you would call developmental assessment, and give them feedback so that they can check whether they are progressing right or not as students. Assessment of learning is, so we call that formative assessment. And then you have summative assessment, which actually is graded or given marks. And within assessment, you could, Professor Mithal mentioned the difficulty of in online courses, assessing in the same way as in exams. It's not easy, although a lot of progress has been done in online marking, which is one of the tools one can use, even though exams are written in hand, but marking can happen online. Objective assessment, interactive assessment. Actually, assessment field is now flourishing with online educational technologies. We are using a lot of collaborative assessment experiments to learn about peer group assessment. How do you give recognition to peer group feedback in the formal assessment, and so on. And assessment is a very powerful tool for realizing learning outcomes, particularly formative assessment. But in the Open University here in UK, we call it continuous assessment. Other universities may call it coursework, but assessment can be a very powerful motivator and progressor of the learning journeys. You can also think of instructional resources. Now, this is where resources can be designed for the different audiences. Now, if I give you an example how we had to consider this very carefully in the Open University, about 25% of our students, and we don't have as many students as Professor Nageshwar Rao has, many millions, we have got only 200,000. We have about 25% of students who are declaring one or other kind of learning difficulty. It could be mental, it could be physical. Now, when you're designing resources for a student who is studying at distance online, you had to worry about that issue. We have some students who are in secure areas like prisons. How do you design online for students who don't have access to internet? So one has to consider instructional resources which can be repurposed for multiple formats. So we offer students audio files. Most of the online content is now screen readable. So you just press it somewhere on the screen and the screen is read by the computer. So you can hear to it. We offer offline versions of all the materials as PDF or digital books. We allow nowadays even audio assessment. So a student can, depending on, say you're doing a vocational course in media studies, where pitch is important, you want to learn how to speak properly, etc. Then you create audio assessment for a student to submit. So, and in languages, again, audio assessment is very important in language. So, some of those tools we are using when designing the instructional resources, but they have to be fit for the learning outcome you are trying to design for. Okay. In terms of the design, we look at the student persona. So we hypothetically think about who is going to be our learner. What are they bringing to us before they start the course? And what are their strengths and gaps where we can understand? Now here, traditionally, we have relied on historical data about our student demographics, about their previous studies and so on. But I think with the arrival of machine learning and artificial intelligence, one can actually very usefully apply these tools to learning analytics and understand student engagement with the materials more carefully and get some insights from that learning analytics to improve the learning design as an instructor. And of course, support is very important too. Learner support. Open University here has actually an associate lecturer for every 25 students. Plus, there is a plethora of support from our professional staff who support students with all kinds of queries, with technical queries, and so on. So learner support should not be underestimated in online instructional design. While teaching is supposed to be, designed in, support should not be ignored in that, because the students will get stuck upon small things or big things, and you need to have that support in place. The communication as a learning activity is very important. So you design in activities for communication between the students, between the instructor and student, written communication, oral communication. These are very active activities of learning that one should not forget about. Actually, Open University has published, like the book that SEMCA has published today, Open University has some materials online which are free for anybody to download in terms of what kind of learning activities inform our thinking in design. The different universities, you can see, list different type of topics in the instructional design. And this paper, which is De Batista's paper, talks about these methods and tries to create a meta-analysis of various techniques for instructional design, which I commend you to read further. Here is another framework that you can look at as a learning designer. So again, as I said, you must have learning outcomes in the middle. You must know what are the outcomes that you are planning to apply. You have to factor in the other factors, like at what point students will come in. Professor Mithal made it clear that how it became difficult when you move from open education resource to a MOOC, because you have a MOOC, have a start and end date, which completely changes the game for you, because you're designing for a cohort rather than any audience coming in anytime. How flexible you want the delivery system to be. And of course, the good learning design should be informed by the research in pedagogy and education. And all the instructional designers should be reading materials in these journals of educational psychology, educational technologies, and there are plenty of good journals. And we publish one of those as well. And then as an designer, you have to think, what do you prioritize among different activities? Here it has mentioned only two, prioritizing communication and collaboration. As I said, we acknowledge there are 7 different learning activities. Communication and collaboration is one of those, but there is assimilative learning activity like reading material, listening to a podcast, watching a video. These are assimilative. There's no interaction between the resource and the participant beyond listening or receiving. But there are other 6 activities, including assessment. Experience over expertise. Again, even though I have been in the Open University for now 17, 18 years, I would not say I'm expert. I'm still learning a lot of things. So continue to learn as we would expect our students to do. But I think the one definition of teacher that has stuck with me for past 3 decades that I have been in profession is a teacher, and a teacher is a lifelong learner. And that's what makes it exciting, because you continue to learn. So this is another article that you can refer to as another framework for designing. And now I'll quickly move to FutureLearn. This is a company which was set up by the Open University in 2013 as a MOOCs platform, but it has evolved into offering all kinds of courses that I will mention in a minute. It has got some fantastic partners from the universities and outside university. It has got about 18 million registered learners now. The MOOCs have grown a lot. You can see this is overall MOOCs growth is close to now about 20,000, 18,000 MOOCs around in the world. And FutureLearn is actually very small in that, because FutureLearn has got about 1,100 MOOCs at the moment or so. But we aim to grow very rapidly in the next few years. So FutureLearn is a mixed bag at the moment. We are thinking how to consolidate and think about the future 5-year strategy we are considering at the moment. But currently, this is the portfolio that it offers. Various short courses, micro-credentials like I'm so glad to hear that SWAYAM MOOCs have been recognized in the British Indian education system. We are trying to get micro-credentials accepted in the UK and Europe. Actually, there is a movement going on in the Europe to get micro-credentials recognized. Academic certificates, we are offering degrees, and we are, of course, looking at short courses called expert tracks, which are kind of a very, very small courses, but they are bundled as expert tracks. So take a person from a 0 level in some subject and take them to a sufficient level that they feel confident about the subjects. So there are bundles of 4 to 5 courses called expert tracks. So that's what Future Learn is doing. Just to close by saying that Open University has actually a postgraduate certificate in online and distance education that we offer on Open University's VLE, conventional that we have, our platform, but also we offered this on the Future Learn. And it has been very popular course, one of the very popular course. Again, we took our MSc in development management, created a course around it from that, which is again a popular course. So these are some of the ways Open University and many other universities are trying to utilize this MOOCs platform, converting into a kind of a huge marketplace for providers to explore and offer these courses to the world at large. So I will stop there and be happy to take any questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Kodwani. Very interesting instructional design, learning design for online courses. Two important points which I found in your slides, which were like when you were talking about liquidity of the learning index and the tailorization. Many people, they are saying when we say that due to the COVID, there is a learning loss, but people, they are saying, and we know that we miss the opportunity of this, the learning, how to make students learn. This was a great opportunity to make them learn. So that's what I think it talks about it. Yeah. And of course, the thing you talked about, the assessment for learning and assessment of learning, and about the collaborative assessment, which need to be a new tool which we have to follow. Thank you so much. We will take few questions before the final comments from Professor Nageshwar Rao. Two questions are in there in the chat box. One question is, can instructional design be included in PhD course or in final semester of PG learning, postgraduate learning? And the second question is, please elaborate about the practical courses in science.
Practical courses in?
Science.
Science
okay. Course, science discipline.
Right. So the first question on PhD and some teaching training, I think is a very, very, very good question, whichever colleague has asked. In the UK universities, it has become apparent that when students come out with a PhD, they come out with good skilled researchers, but they don't necessarily become good teachers just having PhD. So it is now being considered that most universities that offer full-time PhD program must offer students some teaching opportunity. Now, whether it is part of the PhD program itself, or it should be a separate support activity that students are given. Now, as we know, in the US, students tend to do what we call teaching assistant role or tutor assistant role as part of PhD, but that's a separate activity not relating to their thesis. In the Open University, again, we don't have classrooms where we could take students in for class. So what we had done is we have started connecting our students to module teams that create resources, module teams that teach. But designing that in PhD seems to be a mixing up the agenda, because PhD is to develop research skills, and if a student is then further burdened as a part of the project to also demonstrate their teaching skills, I think it will become too demanding for the student. It is better I think teaching is better learned as apprentice, and then you build up with theoretical knowledge around it. So my apprenticeship was in IIM. I was a research and teaching assistant, learned to the good and great professors and how they were running the classes, and learned a lot from this. So I think teaching side has two elements. One is the pedagogic and educational understanding of how learning takes place. And there's a formal course for that, as we know, B.Ed, M.Ed, and PhD in education. And other is being apprenticeship to learn on the job. So I would tend to favor maybe a bit more supportive structure around apprenticing the PhD student in their second, third year of PhD, and then give them some these kind of seminars where they can go in the education department of the university and other places to pick up the skills around what a good teacher must do when they are going to the class or they are designing for online learning. The second question about practical courses in sciences, I can only refer at the moment to my universities. We teach science online, physics, biology, chemistry. We have a lot of science kits that we had developed. Slowly, we have graduated from actually sending out the science kits to students to designing virtual and augmented reality experiments in STEM subjects. So if you look for Open University STEM Lab, Open Lab, you would find free resources on how we are using digital technologies to teach science very practically to our students. Engineering also we are teaching, computer science particularly, but we have some very practical courses in digital photography, which is vocational course, and we are delivering it online. So it is possible to design high quality online learning for even science and engineering courses.
Thank you.
Another question is that many students did not go, I mean, in any university, central university, did not go for the registration because of the registration fees. I don't know if, how can it be solved? So we will take another question, that is, what are the strategies followed for minimizing dropout rates in the online courses?
Yeah.
This is an important question.
Very, very important question, Professor Parhar. As Professor Nageshwar now Rao would know, the pass rates, success rates of students doing online distance learning are not great. We have challenged too, but we have grown that number a lot. So we do it in two ways. One is that you start with a good design, first of all. And that's where design becomes very important to be informed by, given the scale that open universities work at. We have a lot of historical data about student behavior, how many submit assessment on time, how frequently they visit the online. So you use all that information and convert them into some kind of a model to understand what are the pain points for the student when they are progressing through online, and address those pain points. The one that we have found, like, for example, there's a lot of engagement on the online resources when the assignment deadline is there. So 2 weeks or a week before assignment deadline, you would see there's a peak in the online resource engagement in the student behavior. Then question is, how do you keep them engaged between those two assessment deadlines? And then you start thinking of interventions, whether it's an electronic intervention, communication, or a student support team calling up, are you okay, and so on. So that is one insight that you can get from student behavior. The good thing about online is that student can leave a lot of footprint of their engagement on the online platform. If you can mine that information, you can learn a lot about what are the pain points and then build that into the model. So over time, we have built that in. Other thing is, give them access to foundation materials. So before they embark on first year study, not many people had done online education before. So if you can give them a 5-hour or a 10-hour module like an open education resource, before they embark on the formal study, tell them to please go and complete this. They get used to how online learning works. And it requires a lot of self-discipline. So that is another way you can improve the chances of success for students. And third, there are many, but let me start with the third, which is perhaps very important: feedback. Not on the summative assessment, on the formative assessment. To require them to submit frequently, say every 6 weeks or so, and give them high quality feedback on what they had done. Now, this is an expensive model of feedback, but I hope the labor cost in India is probably in favor of doing something like this. If we can get the right online tutor support and capacity building wide kind of work that SEMCA is doing, we can really improve the quality of feedback to student, and that goes a very long way in improving the student success.
I'll take one more question, and the last one. That will be, to what extent the copyright is important when developing OERs and other online course content, especially when there are several online courses floating?
Yes, I think copyright is just as important as you will teach in any other university. Online doesn't give us license to violate copyrights of any author, and hence the library budget for a good university, which is online university, will be significant budget, particularly if you are referring to articles and so on. But good thing is there's a lot of content being left in the open access journals. There are a lot of books which are called open books, and the digital rights are not expensive for those. And there's a lot of material in common, Creative Commons also. But my suggestion would be that whoever is designing online, if you are using copyrighted material, use only with the permission of that publisher or the writer. Otherwise, don't use it, because at the end of the day, we expect students not to engage in academic poor practice, okay, plagiarism and so on. How can, as instructional design, we can afford to violate anybody's copyright? So they are respected in online designing, and if we have difficulty in sourcing or they are too expensive, I can tell you some of the materials I don't use, because we are using only one article out of that journal in a year or two. And if the journal is too expensive, I would not recommend my module team to go for it. So copyrights are respected in online. A good online learning designer, good online university would not violate copyrights.
Thank you, Dr. Kodwani. We will end with these questions. I know Indira Gandhi National Open University is building capacities of the faculties on instructional design for online courses. A very, very important area which we, the teachers, need to learn when we are developing online courses. Thank you so much. Now to Professor Nageshwar Rao for his last final comments or observations.
Wonderful lecture, and we were enlightened by the insights which were given by Professor Kodwani as well as Professor Pankaj Mithal also. And they told us that how to go for an instructional design, and also the experiences, the activities which are being carried on at Swayam in India and Future Learn also. A few quick observations from my side. We are moving towards online education, but the mindset is still important for most of us. Specifically when we see that our younger generation, it has already tilted towards online education, but it will take some more time to move towards online education by the seniors. And unless these people, they move towards the higher secondary and then move to graduation, then the things will be much, much better. Because COVID has helped us to move fast, but still that movement, because when you talk about computers, computer-based examination, to a student of history, to a student of English or Hindi, or maybe in any language, some part difficulty is there. 40s, 50s, again, that online learning is okay, but as far as the subsequent things, examination and other things, that is why the dropout rates are very high. So the change in mindset, that is the first thing which we have to see, and it will take its own time. That is why I think Professor Kodwani has projected it will take 10 more years to move towards the online education, but that is the future. But one thing which we can consider here is let that education mode, the delivery mode be blended. Certain extent the online and certain extent that ODL structure. The second thing the micro credentials, yes, that is quite relevant to most of us. edX, Coursera, FutureLearn, even Swayam, they all are the course-based learning. And they all are moving ahead. Of course, in our country, the Swayam, there the free registration is there. But because of our numbers, we can afford to have that. But it is not so in case of other countries and other these MOOC providers, the micro credentials providers. But this is going to help us to go for the multidisciplinary focus. If an individual wants to go for a course in social science, another course in the management, and the third course in the physical sciences, that is possible only once we allow these micro credentials. And that is why the credit transfer mechanism, it is being strengthened. It will take again some more time. That is what I'm telling you. Mindset is much, much more important for credit transfer mechanism from the micro credentials to program-based learning. Because when you look at any program, it will have 15, 20 micro courses, and they can be certified also. But when they are to be made as a program, then the conversion process, it will take its own time, and still the recognition process. I think that as Kodwani has pointed out, maybe it will take another 5 to 6 years when only the people will go for these micro credentials. They would not like to waste their time for studying all the courses of a program. And some of these courses, they are not suited to the requirements of the learners. And the graph which Kodwani has presented, what supplier side and the learner side. Suppliers, we add 20 courses, but learners want only 8 courses, 12 courses. And maybe he would like to get it from the remaining courses from other source. So therefore the micro credentials, they have got its own importance, and they will come in future as the new developments as far as this online movement is concerned. Research, yes. Pedagogy, again, that is an area where the researches we have to promote, because still we see that the learners want something and the instructors provide somewhat different. So how that synchronization between the expectations of the learners and the learner support services which the service provider they provides, educational institutions they are providing, that gap is to be minimized. So therefore the pedagogical researches that needs to be further strengthened, and then the things they will give us much better results. Instructional design, again, we can't give any specific methodology. Again, it is to be tailor-made to suit the requirements of the learners. There cannot be one specific instructional design which may say that it is suited to all types of programs, because science programs and the arts programs, the language programs, and nowadays people are moving towards the use of channels, the TV channels, to reach to the learners at their doorsteps. So the developments are going on. We all have to adapt ourselves to the changing requirements. And that is why I must share with all of you that even in our country also, 2018 regulations online were there. 2020, we have gone for again a new regulations. And still right now in 2022, we are still thinking that regulation of 2020 has become obsolete. So the movements are going on that at a faster pace. And definitely the science programs, because they're the virtual realities, they all are helping us a lot, how to go for those practicals which can be carried on. So nothing to worry, because everything is feasible in the online mode of conducting the teaching learning process. But right now the movement is conventional, then blended, and the online. So that we have to visualize, and accordingly we must strategize our plans of action. So I'm very happy to receive the valuable inputs from both the distinguished speakers. And this exposure to all of us will definitely help to see that how we as the higher educational institutions in the field of online education move forward to strengthen our learner support services. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Professor Nageshwar Rao, Honorable Vice Chancellor, IGNOU, for those enlightening words and on the challenges that we come across in online learning, and for concisely presenting the ideas from today's session and weaving it into the different contexts. So thank you so much, sir. Thank you. May I now request Professor Madhu Parhar to please extend the vote of thanks.
I think that this webinar was a very interesting webinar to understand what, from the policymakers to the developers, those who are thinking about the online courses, and to understand what online courses are all about. So on behalf of all the attendees and behalf of all my SEMCA colleagues, I thank Dr. Kodwani for his excellent presentation. With your due permission, we will share the slides with our attendees as they are being asking. Very important points which you raised was, and which one of the important points I emphasize and we emphasize is about the learning outcomes, how well we frame those learning outcomes, because again, the learning depends upon those learning outcomes, and the rest activities, learning activities or resources and so on and so forth comes later. So thank you so much. I acknowledge and appreciate what Dr. Pankaj Mithal, she said. Vast experience she has on how the SWAM courses evolved and came into existence, and what the University Grants Commission, the highest regulatory authority in India, what they are doing it. My sincere gratitude to Professor Nageshwar Rao for chairing the session, as well as telling us about talking about the mindset of the students. Yes, it will take time, but the sooner, as he also meant that the sooner all of us we do, the better it will be, because these are the futures of education, not only in 2022, but the days to come. All AI, virtual reality, virtual labs, and so on and so forth. This is the future which not only the formal universities, the open university systems has to do. Just one point I want to add for Professor Kodwani. Ministry of Education, Government of India has a very excellent virtual lab program. All the IITs, they have developed, and few other formal nodal agencies they have, but this has to spread out to the students who are in the formal universities. Other providers, which I see like for example, Lobster, they charge money, whereas this program on virtual labs by Government of India is free. Anyone can access this. And that's what we are going to see. And we have seen some of the experiments which UK Open University has it on its platform, Open Learn. So thank you, sir, Professor Nageshwar Rao, for chairing this session. Last point which I must admit and say, that when I approached each one of them, they never took a second to say yes to this webinar. So that's what the importance of the theme and for each one of you is for developing the online courses. Last but not the least, I thank all the attendees who attended this webinar, and to my colleagues, to Dr. Falachandra and Manas for editing the book and giving to us an excellent document and literature. See you all soon in maybe some other webinar or somewhere. Thank you so much once again.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.